SMT Nation, we back. Nation, Verizon is really fighting the potential spectrum assignment to AT&T and FirstNet, a very large swath of really important, powerful mid-band. It's going to provide a ton of capacity, and it's just going to be gifted to AT&T and FirstNet, and Verizon is really pushing back. There's other entities involved pushing back as well. I want to talk about that here in today's video. Let's discuss if it's a good idea, a bad idea for AT&T to be provided the spectrum free of any charge, for FirstNet, and then maybe kind of like what the chances are, what are the outcomes potentially here from all this. Link for the article from Dano Light Reading will be provided, link in the description. Ways to support us can be found there as well. Please do like and share this video. Subscribe if it's your first time here, and turn on the bell notification icon to never miss an upload from the FC and from the SMT. Speaking of the FCC, all right, so the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, has plans to possibly assign 50 megahertz of N79 4.9 gigahertz to FirstNet, and then FirstNet, of course, has that contract with AT&T, and in which they build the first responder network. All right, now the basic premise of this, the Public Safety Spectrum Alliance, is in support of assigning the 4.9 gigahertz to FirstNet. AT&T builds it. CERC, or the Coalition for Emergency Response and Critical Infrastructure, opposes that assignment of the 4.9 gigahertz band to FirstNet and AT&T. They believe that they should be retaining it for transportation and emergency communications, specifically some very large metro area, such as like New York and Boston. Their public servants and amongst other leadership individuals are fighting this too, right? And that's not nothing. Okay, those are some major cities, and those operations, they could probably provide a very good argument against the assignment of the spectrum. Not to be remiss would be to think about Verizon, who's also pushing back. They've been saying, we want to see how much usage band 14 has before we go and start assigning additional bandwidth, just giving it to FirstNet. Don't forget that Verizon serves an enormous amount of first responders. They were the first responder network, right? I mean, now I get it, it's AT&T with FirstNet, but a lot of, agency accounts are still at Verizon. They're trusted. They're the ones that they use, and some of those folks still have not gone to FirstNet. Some have gone to FirstNet and left, and returned to Verizon for whatever reason, right? So that 50 megahertz is potentially going to, change the competitive landscape for midband, because what AT&T will be able to do, if you guys remember, we discussed this on the podcast, is 50 megahertz of bandwidth puts them more in alignment with both T-Mobile and Verizon. A lot of people have spoke to the position that AT&T is in and how they don't have as much bandwidth as their competitors. Well, this would most definitely boost them ahead and push them up and close the gap, if not completely eliminate it, those types of things. But, AT&T has never discussed usage patterns on band 14. That's a great question. Think about it, right? If band 14 has only been used, to a 20, 30, 40, 50% capacity usage, then why should AT&T get additional spectrum through FirstNet for this, right? And another thing to consider would be, why does it have to be all 50 megahertz? I think that's another thing to consider, but I do kind of believe that AT&T played this very coy. I think that they were very light on the C-band, and they went all in on the DoD. So the 3.7 gigahertz, the 3.45 gigahertz, collectively, they got 120 megahertz of N77, less than T-Mobile and Verizon in their dedicated mid-band channels, knowing that they were going to get this potentially, so they could have saved the money, right? They didn't spend as much at auction. They didn't compete as fiercely for C-band, like, say, for example, what Verizon did, getting 160 megahertz of C-band. And then, of course, the outcome, T-Mobile ended up being able to get more C-band in those auctions too. Right, so there is quite a bit to consider here. I know there's a lot of critics, Boston EMS, Boston Housing Authority, the police department locally, there in that city. I know the New York Metropolitan Transport Authority was also in on this, pushing back. There is pushback here. I just don't know if it's enough. Verizon says it serves 35,000 agencies. They clearly want a chance at the spectrum, and they're putting together a compelling argument. Now it's time to discuss kind of what I think is going to happen. I think that FirstNet is going to get its way, and I think AT&T is going to get its way. I think this is already deep. I think they've wanted to do this. I don't think there's going to be enough pushback, or I don't know if there can be enough pushback to change the outcome. I do think this is going to be assigned to FirstNet. I do think AT&T is going to get it. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say it's like an 85% chance, right? Nothing is 100. Anything can change. I guess if it got enough resistance, I guess if, somehow, some way, some lawyers were to get involved and they were very compelling in their arguments against it and presented it to the FCC. And of course, we have seen the FCC cower and do the wrong thing. Just look back at C-band and the FAA, right? And it was a bend but don't break type of deal, but they definitely looked pretty weak there. So I don't know, anything could happen. What do you guys think is the outcome? What do you think should happen? Your thoughts and opinions welcome down below. You're the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard.